We understand how scary and overwhelming it can feel as a parent to know that your child either has seen or will see these explicit images or pornography. And here's the thing that we always say: you're not alone. It's not yours or your child's fault.
Welcome to the Healthy Screen Habits Podcast. I'm Hillary Wilkinson. Whether you're starting your parenting journey with a newborn or looking to connect with your teen on technology, let's learn some new healthy screen habits together. Just a note about today's episode. Due to the nature of the content and discussion, we are going to recommend this specifically for listeners over 18. If you're choosing to do a shared listen with your kids, please do a first listen on your own so you're aware of the content. Thank you. Now, when I get questions about how today's youth is being affected by pornography, I have a few resources I like to recommend. And at the very top of this list is Culture Reframed. Formed in 2015, Culture Reframed is the premier science based global organization of scholars, professionals, and activists addressing the harms of pornography to youth. And whether we like it or not, kids as young as kindergarten learn about sex every day in our digital age through advertising, music, TV, movies. I mean, it's a constant bombardment with a skewed version kind of sex and relationships. And what I love about Culture Reframed is they not only do the research on what these effects are having on our youth, they also provide solutions. My guest today is here to talk about one of the latest resources offered that is both groundbreaking and honestly, the more we talk about sextortion and other things like this, I believe to be truly life saving. It's free thanks to generous donors, grants, and support from others like you guys. And it is really turning sex ed on its ear. I know it's been in development for a few years. I'm really excited to learn more today. Welcome to Healthy Screen Habits, Culture Reframe's own Director of Programming, Dr. Mandy Sanchez.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Oh, yeah, I'm thrilled to talk about this. So, Mandy, she's told me I can call her Mandy. What
Yes.
Mandy, what is the name of this amazing free resource and who is it available to?
Yes, absolutely. This is our new porn critical sex education curriculum, and it is available for everyone, particularly aimed at educators teaching kids age 14 and up. So it is a free resource. It is, you can get to it by our website, and it is on its own learning management system called Brainier. So we are really happy to provide that for any educator working with kids age 14 and up in the area of sex or health education.
Don't all states though in the US mandate sex ed in schools? Like what's the difference here?
Yeah, there's a difference. In the US, sex education standards vary by state, with some states not requiring it in schools at all. But as of June of 2022, 28 states and Washington, D.C. have mandated it. But of those states, only 17 require that the content be medically accurate. So today's limited
Wow.
sex education generally ignores that reality that most young people are exposed to pornography. We're looking at anywhere from 9 to 11, but as you mentioned earlier, as young as 5 and 6 years old. So without this robust sex education, young people are going to learn from any resource that's available to them, like their friends, the internet, and pornography. And these sources are really unlikely to provide that accurate or helpful information.
Right, right. And before we hit record, you and I were talking a little bit how whenever we kind of enter this area of chat, of pornography, one of the things that immediately gets called into question is whether this is a faith-based or a moralistic argument.
Mhm.
And can you speak a little bit to that? Like, is culture reframe faith-based? Is it like, what can you provide, enlighten us?
Yes, absolutely. Well, we are not faith-based. We are not politically based. We are a research-based and scientifically backed organization. So we look at pornography in terms of a public health crisis of the digital age, and it's fueled by hypersexualized media. And we have over 40 years of research that shows how pornography is undermining the social, the emotional, cognitive, and physical health of kids, especially. And these studies also are showing that porn really shapes how we think about gender, sexuality, relationships, intimacy, sexual violence, and gender equality. So we have to look at it from a public health standpoint and then provide a public health solution to the problem.
Well, I think that just underscores why we have this direct need for what you guys call, and I have adopted this terminology simply because I don't know of
Mhm.
a better other way to say it, but like porn critical
Porn crit-
conversations and
Absolutely.
yeah, and education that specifically addresses, because like you said, I think otherwise there gets to be a lot of voices in the room with
Mhm.
kids that are, developing. So
Right, right. And I mean, we are, like I said, we are research based, and our research shows that comprehensive, developmentally appropriate sex education results in better overall health outcomes for people. And that's a public health issue, right? So we have to think about where young people are getting their information about sex and relationships. And most often we see that pornography is being the teacher, and we totally back the idea that young people have a right to factual and accurate, objective information instead of this moralistic or politically bent information, so that they can make informed decisions about themselves and keep themselves and others safe.
when we come back, we're going to be talking about some of the most troubling trends happening right now on social media and gaming platforms.
At what age should I give my child a smartphone? How much screen time should I allow each day? What are the best filters to use on my family's devices? Sound familiar? These questions and more are answered at the Healthy Screen Habits website. We've curated the best articles, books, videos, and many other resources to help you figure out how you want to use technology in your life. Click on the awareness section to learn about the issues and dangers surrounding screen use. Then click on the Tools page to download printables you can use with your family today, including the Healthy Screen Habits Family Technology Plan. Visit our website at www.healthyscreenhabits.org for the resources and tools you need to get started.
I'm speaking with Dr. Mandy Sanchez, the Director of Programming at Culture Reframed, who's been researching and writing about pornography and violence against women for over 20 years. Mandy is also a trained trauma informed facilitator. So, wow. You kind of really handle the stuff of life that not everyone is brave enough to. And thank you because of the
Yeah.
hard work you do. And kids and families now have resources to turn
Yes.
to. And when we look at data, we can see that kids today are actually ending up in emergency rooms due to accidents less than
Mm.
they have historically. The rate of teen pregnancies in the US are at an all-time low. So I'm bringing up all of these because it could be argued that our kids are in better places than ever with safe sex practices. So, how does hypersexualized media and porn harm people? Because
Mm.
there's a I don't know, there's kind of a pushback on what we're
Yeah.
seeing in some data.
Right. Well, I think the main thing that we need to think about is the way in which porn shapes the culture in which we live. So, the porn industry influences what we watch, what we see, what we consume, and porn tells stories. And not only is the majority of porn, and this is mainstream pornography, violent and degrading to women, it also tells stories about what it means to be a quote, real man, one who lacks empathy and compassion and the capacity for intimacy, and what it means to be a real woman who exists to be used and abused. So that's what porn is teaching our kids. It tells consumers a story about themselves and others. And the scripts in pornography most often rely on power imbalances, on derogatory terms, racism, violent sexual behaviors. And we're all influenced by, to some degree, by the messages it conveys. So I've been doing the research for 20 years on that connection between pornography and violence to women and children, but 40 years of research, so 4 decades of research has shown that it really undermines the whole person health of young people. So it impacts every facet of their developmental wellness, whether that's social or emotional, cognitive, or physical. So it's shaping how kids think about sex and relationships, including respectful behavior and consent and things like equality and their understanding of their own bodies and how it works, really. And porn consumption has really been scientifically linked to the development of negative self images, low self esteem, increased depression, the likelihood of eating disorders in both boys and girls, increased anxiety, and the decreased capacity for intimacy and connection. And
Mm,
we see this link to the increased likelihood of kids engaging in risky and violent sexual behaviors, and the increased likelihood of being sexually victimized.
yeah, yeah. So I can see how the data that I just referenced does not align with the harms that are being
Mm.
caused by porn, because I
Right.
think that the harms are probably more accurately reflected in the mental health statistics that we're looking
Absolutely.
at, not just
Hmm.
emergency room. And because honestly, I cannot think of too many teens that are going to, be telling mom and dad they need to go to an emergency room due to some sexual trauma that
Right.
they may
Right.
or may not have I don't see it
Hmm.
happens. I really appreciate your phrase. You said porn tells stories.
Hmm.
And as an educator, we know that storytelling is actually one of the most effective ways to teach kids. And so you can
Absolutely.
see how porn is really truly hijacking an
Mm.
educational component. So,
Absolutely.
how do you recommend? So now we know kind of the background, but how do we talk to kids about
Mm.
hypersexualized media in porn
Yeah. So
without sounding like, you know, old?
old and old and vanilla and all of those things that we're
Yeah.
sometimes called. Well, first off, we understand how scary and overwhelming it can feel as a parent to know that your child either has seen or will see these explicit images or pornography. And here's the thing that we always say: you're not alone. It's not yours or your child's fault, but parents are perfectly positioned to offer their kiddos alternative and healthy messages about sex that instill respect in themselves and others. And there is action that you can take to help your child become more resilient to the negative impacts that I just mentioned. So, we have on our website free courses for parents, and we use them as best practice toolkits. It gives parents and even educators that science based framework that we were talking about, in which to have those gentle and safe conversations with kids about explicit content. And believe it or not, kids want to have these conversations. And
Mm,
even when they act like they don't, when we interview kids or when we read reports of kids being interviewed, they say, oh my gosh, like it made me feel like my parent actually cared about what was going on in my life right now, even though it really is a far cry from what they grew up with. Right. So to really have the conversation, and we say it's never too early and never too late to have those conversations. And we always recommend scaffolding, right? Scaffolding that information by correctly naming body parts and talking about body boundaries at younger ages. And then you can talk about consent at any age
Sure.
with children. So we also recommend being really present and watching for warning signs, and this has to do with, tech use and social media use, gaming, but, really watching, are they closing their device or they're sticking their phone under their leg as soon as you walk in? Are they spending long amounts of time in the bathroom with a connected device, right? Are they having sleep disruptions? Are they being very secretive? So, our number one tip is to start the conversation, keep it open, keep it honest, and keep it regular, right? So encourage those questions and you be the resource that your kid's going to come to ask questions about sex and relationship. You're that one that offers no shame and no blame and a safe and supportive environment to have the conversation. So we have conversation starters embedded within our free programs that really help parents start the actual conversation. We have a compose yourself model that allows parents to kind of stay calm and not panic, and then come back in and say, we got to have this conversation because I'm here to support you and keep you safe, and that's my number one job as a parent.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
Mhm.
one of the things also that I appreciate about Culture Reframed is you guys are parents. You guys, you
Absolutely.
guys,
I have a
that
12 and 16 year
I
old.
just laughed when you said the compose yourself. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I just spoke with I just recorded with a guy out of San Diego who does, is doing units on sexploitation. And I was
Mhm.
saying, how do you stay calm? How do you do this?
Right.
So that's a huge part of it, is just like,
Yeah.
okay, how do we remove our own fear, get grounded, and then just move
Mm.
forward?
And then move in, not panic. We always say the number one thing you should do if you walk in and see your child on a site or being exposed there is to walk out. Our first gut reaction is to shut it all down and go in and with our hair on fire. But the best thing to do is walk out, because then that gives you a second to really, okay, let's take a
Take a
breath.
breath.
Like, let's
Yeah.
take a breath. Let's compose ourselves. Let's stay calm. Let's understand that there's a natural curiosity to explore our bodies and learn about how our bodies work and how sex and relationships work. But to really kind of hang on a second, go in and say, hey, we have to have a conversation, but I'm going to let you pick the time. Right? You decide whether it's today, whether it's tomorrow, but it has to happen. And usually we
Right.
recommend, get in the car, you have 1 minute to your destination, and that's what it should be, this 1 minute conversation over your 100-minute lectures. And if we have 100 1-minute conversations, then we're scaffolding, we're building, we're talking, we're checking in. So, and then use what we have available to us. Like, I hear songs on the radio and my kids are dancing to, like singing to the songs, and I'll turn it down and I'll say, "What did you just say? What was that lyric?" And of course they're like, "Oh no, nothing. I didn't say anything." Right? And so this is a really good opportunity to say, "What do you think that means when
Right.
he says X, Y, and Z? What does that mean? What do you think about that? Or how would you tell a friend who received a naked selfie? What advice would you give them to do? And so you're really engaging them, and really kids want to be your teacher. They want to teach old mom the new trick, the
Right.
new tricks. So if they can teach you and they can school you on what's current, then let them be the guide and you just be there to ask the questions.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
And the lots of little conversations, I think, is
Hmm.
so important, because I think as adults, it's our tendency to just go, okay, here we go, do a deep dive, stay down for a long time, come up and go, whoo, check that
Whew,
box, we're done,
done.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
it's better with many, many little than
Hmm.
one big.
Then one big,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So, you've talked about kind of like letting our kids be kind of drivers of current
Hmm.
trends.
Hmm.
And do you, I, I hear you and I want to endorse that. However, I also want to know from your perspective,
Yeah. Yeah.
what do you guys see as some of the most troubling trends happening right now on social media
Yeah.
or gaming platforms?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been researching social media and gaming platforms for the past 3 to 4 years now, and looking at these viral challenges, which many of them turn out to be fake. But we have to take a look at TikTok, right? And
Mhm.
some of the more recent, but now it's like kind of old, are those blackout challenges where teens were dying of asphyxiation. And they were pressing on chests or holding their noses or kind of using strangulation techniques so that they could black out. And we're seeing the rise of strangulation in types of problematic sexual behaviors. So that's directly related to what we do. Also, there's an "Are you into me" trend where users are posting a picture of their crush on TikTok without their permission, and often with the hashtag stalker, or it will say Joe Goldberg method. And that's based off the Netflix series You,
Oh,
where the main
sure.
character, Joe, is an obsessively sinister stalker who uses social media and the internet to get close to the women that he stalks. So that's about glorifying, glamorizing stalking, taking pictures of people without their consent. So it blurs those lines for us. So we have an eye on that. On Snapchat, we have the Mean Girls 2.0. When the Mean Girls movie came out, there was Snapchat applications to be a mean girl. And we hear from lots of parents and school administrators that this was causing a rise in bullying in schools. So we were really looking at that. And then, of course, catfishing for reputation ruin is another
Mhm.
one where kids will start a fake account. They'll use their friend's name and they'll post really rude sexual comments or embarrassing photos or sometimes racist comments on there where they're passing back and forth nudes and sexting. We also see disordered eating, self-harm, suicide disguised as fitness or self-help on applications like Discord, for instance. And you mentioned sextortion
Mhm.
earlier, where adults could be posing as those age appropriate romantic interests online, and they're soliciting nude or compromising photos and using them to blackmail teens. Um, and then we see also it's a development, so it's not yet a trend, but this is something we have our eye on at Culture Reframed, but it has to do with AI. So this, AI social media vetting, the deep fakes are making coming back in. So we're kind of looking at that, the AI generated voice and photos and images. So we're kind of watching that as well.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned right off the bat the choking challenges
Yeah.
and yeah, and I mean very deadly challenges.
Hmm.
I've recorded with um parents who sadly have lost children due to those.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
this whole new trend of sexual strangulation
Mm.
is something that I think it kind of has flown under the radar and it got
Yeah.
incorporated into some Hollywood type shows
Sure has.
that, yeah, like Euphoria and a bunch of
Hmm.
shows that were very mature in content. But I think teens kind of got exposed to a whole level of
Yeah.
this violence, you
Yeah.
know?
And we see that. I mean, Peggy Orenstein just wrote an article in the New York Times. It was in April, mid-April this year, and it was called "The Troubling Trend in Teenage Sex," and talked about this notion of what is strangulation, but kids are calling choking, where she was citing research from Debbie Herbenick. She is an Indiana University professor, and she did a campus representative survey and found that 2/3 of those she interviewed had been choked during sex, and 1/3 had been choked in their most recent sexual encounter. So this was a huge increase, nearly 40% increase for those who said that they were between the ages of 12 and 17 the first time that that happened. So we're interviewing 18 to 24-year-olds, but they're reflecting on when they were 12 and 17. So definitely talks of strangulation being portrayed as erotic and even consensual, right? Even though most don't understand the extreme health effects that are related to strangulation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's hard to have these conversations with your kids. I
It
mean,
sure is.
I have a 21-year-old son, and it's hard to say,
Mhm.
"Hey, so," and bring these things up.
Yeah. Right, right. And it
But
was, but I always say, like, if we can use the media, like if the media is going to be out there and it's not going away anytime soon, whether that be social media, gaming, movies, music, whatever it is, let's try to use that as conversation starters, right? Just like in the lyrics that we hear, or, I there is a song by Jack Harlow and he says, I'll choke you, but I ain't no killer. And I asked, my 12-year-old, I said, what did he say there? And of course he's like, "Oh, I don't know. Is it bad?" Like, and he didn't know what it meant. But my 16-year-old was like, we should have a conversation about what it means because I know kids in my school that are doing this. And of course we opened this up and, my oldest decides to tell my youngest, like, this is what's going on. And of course he's shocked, because he's like, why would like, that doesn't make any sense, And so then kind of move forward on that. Like, this is a trend. This is what people are doing, and it can really hurt you. Like this
yeah.
can be very dangerous. And so then it opens up that space,
Yeah. Yeah. So, thank you
Yeah.
for bringing it into this space. We have to take a short break, but when we come back, I'm going to ask Dr. Mandy Sanchez for her healthy screen habit. Gab Wireless now offers options. Wearable tech like the Gab Watch, devices like Gab phones, and even a kid safe, non explicit music library. Built on the most reliable wireless network in the country, Gab is a go to for first phones and safe tech. Get safety, peace of mind, and an added discount by using the code HSHabits at checkout. I'm speaking with Dr. Mandy Sanchez, the Director of Programming at Culture Reframed since 2021. The mission at Culture Reframed is to stop the emotional, behavioral, and sexual harms of pornography to children and youth. I feel like today, through the sex ed curriculum, you've given us a great tool to help us on that path. And now, on every episode of the podcast, I ask each guest for a healthy screen habit. And this is a tip or takeaway that listeners can put into practice into their own home nearly immediately. What's yours?
Great. Well, mine is to educate yourself through our free online programs to create the space and talk to your kids openly and honestly about hypersexualized media and porn. Find those teachable moments to build on these conversations. And remember, this is about safety, and it's our number one job to keep our kids safe. So check out our free resources on our website.
Yes, I love that. And I also love the parent based portion where there's conversation starters. It makes it very accessible and approachable. It isn't this like deep dive into the dark and scary unknown that I think like when, you're like, oh my gosh, here I'm, you know,
Yeah.
planning the leprechaun visit and not wanting to talk. I mean, it's like,
Right.
yeah, you we We teach a lot as moms. It's
Yeah.
like,
Absolutely, we
yeah,
do. Between tying shoes and then talking about pornography, like
right.
there's a lot that we do. And we don't, I mean, we shouldn't expect parents to be experts in porn too. We have to be experts in everything else. So we just try to make it easier for
Yeah.
parents.
As always, you can find a complete transcript of this show and a link to all of the resources mentioned by visiting the show notes for this episode. You do this by going to healthyscreenhabits.org, click the podcast button, and find this episode. Mandy, thank you so much for everything you do. It's not everyone who has kind of the courage to make a career out of the darker side of humanity. And I'm so grateful for the work that you do.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for elevating our organization.
For more information, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Healthy Screen Habits. Make sure to visit our website, healthyscreenhabits.org, where you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts or via RSS, so you'll never miss an episode. It's free, it's fun, and you get a healthy new screen habit each week. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate you giving us a quick rating. It really does help other people find us and spread the word of healthy screen habits. Or if you'd simply like to tell a friend, we'd love that too. I so appreciate you spending your time with me this week, and I look forward to learning more healthy habits together.